The streetlights had become few and far between, every passing burst of light illuminating the interior of our 1997 Toyota Camry, driving us onward to our destination. My father liked to drive in silence, almost trance-like, his personal meditation only broken by the occasional cigarette. I occupied the passenger seat and my silence with the company of my cell phone. The relationship with my father was largely like this the past 2 months, after losing my mother to breast cancer. Neither of us able to share our grief with the other, it was left to fester. Maybe that was one of the reasons Dad decided to quit his job at the machine factory and uproot me in the middle of my junior year of high school. Whatever his reasons for relocating us to Maine and taking on a role as a lighthouse keeper, I was sure it wouldn't heal our broken family. I got my first glimpse of the lighthouse on the horizon from behind the dusty glare of the windshield. I guessed it was close to 70 feet tall and just as old, if not older. The outside was solid stone and mortar, no frills or decoration. The top came to an equally unimpressive and plain crown shape. The lighthouse was situated on a jutting peninsula, maybe a half-mile wide and 2 miles long, ending in 50-foot cliff face on the ocean, our new home. I think my dad saw the look of apprehension on my face. "Jake, I know this is a big change from the city, and Lord knows we have both been through enough recently. I know how hard this is moving and leaving all your friends behind. But I think this will be good for us, a chance to start new and make new opportunities," he said as he exhaled a cloud of smoke. "No, I understand, Dad. Whatever you think is best," I replied. I didn't want to upset him, even though I felt as lonely as the lighthouse looked. We returned to our normal silence over the next 30 minutes as we made our way through our new town, Cape Heights. My mood continued to sink during our trip through town. Cape Heights offered little in the way of entertainment or shopping. The town seemed to have barely made it into the 21st century. Dad lit another cigarette as we finally pulled into the small gravel patch at the lighthouse that acted as a parking lot. We parked next to an old Chevy box truck that seemed to be more rust than truck. As we exited the car, we were greeted by the caretaker, a tall graying man leaving the lighthouse. "Good morning, folks. You must be Paul." My dad shook his hand and flicked his cigarette out. "Yes, sir. I'd like to introduce my son, Jake." "Nice to meet you, sir," I said as I shook his hand. "Call me Sam," was all he said. I guess Sam had to be in early 60s. He was close to 6 feet tall with shaggy graying brown hair, a thick mustache, and eyes like stormy seas. He was wearing a faded brown jacket and faded blue jeans. On first impression, he looked like a man raised on the seas. Sam invited us into the lighthouse for a tour and to explain the responsibilities of Dad's new job. The inside of the lighthouse was surprisingly modern, with an open floor plan and 3 big bay windows that faced the water from the ground floor. The kitchen was retrofitted with new appliances and granite countertops and a landline phone. There was a fully stocked pantry, as well as food cellar full to bursting. The dining room had a solid oak table, china cabinet, and even a mini chandelier. The living room had a 50-inch TV and a comfortable leather couch to watch it from. I would even be happy with the bedroom once I hung up some posters. I began to think maybe living here wouldn't be so bad after all. After showing us the basic living quarters, Sam took us to the top of the lighthouse. "You get used to walking the steps after a while," he commented. "Doesn't ever get easier, but it gets familiar. I've walked these stairs plenty of times over the last 20 years as caretaker, know each of them by heart." As we continued upward, Sam told us the history of the lighthouse. I suppose I'll start with the history of Cape Heights. The land the town is on originally was settled by Native Americans, known as the Red Paint People. Those original people claimed this land was sacred and the waters off the coast as well. Claimed there was spirits in the water and other things as well, some old deep magic. They lost this land to the French sometime in the 1600s. The French claimed they fought like devils, all covered in red war paint, fighting with weapons made of bone from other conquered native tribes. They eventually lost though. Bone don't hold up to steel weapons. The land then went back and forth between the English and French till the English kicked him out for good and made it a colony. The lighthouse was erected just after the Revolutionary War, when more ships started coming from farther up north, taking fish and lumber down south, after a number of trading ships disappeared of the surrounding coast. Here, the new Americans decided to build this lighthouse. The light has weathered many a storm since then, and never has her light extinguished, except for once. Every caretaker and keeper has been charged with that duty to always keep the light shining. Once we reached the top, Sam explained the light to Dad. The light now is all electrical, the housing consisting of 6 huge bulbs that rotated on a giant plate enclosed by lenses on all sides. Sam explained how it all worked. I grew bored quickly, only listening long enough to gather there was a breaker box downstairs in the kitchen where the power switch was, a switch for a foghorn, and that the most maintenance required by us would be changing out a bulb every once in a while or flipping a breaker. I daydreamed while staring at the ocean until my dad's calls for me to join them interrupted my thoughts. We all headed back downstairs in the kitchen. Now that I've given you a proper tour and explained the basics of how the light works, you should be good to go. But I would be remiss to not leave you fellas with 2 more things, Sam said. I told you the light has never gone out except for once. Even if you see no ships, you must keep that light going. That light is the difference between life and death, and you are the keeper of that light, the protector of life. That light must never run out. The town depends on it. If it does, darkness comes and hell with it. His last statement filled me with unease, and I could tell it made Dad uneasy as well. Secondly, Sam continued, as I've explained, the maintenance is easy enough. You know where replacement bulbs and parts are, as well as the food stocks in the cellar. I've left my number on the fridge, as well as a list of rules you must follow. This list is vital in keeping the lighthouse operating as it should, and keeping y'all both safe. Do not deviate from this list and follow all instructions to the letter. With that, Sam left us and assured us he would be back in a week to check on us and our supplies. What was all that about darkness and hell coming with it? And the town depending on the light? I asked Dad. I don't know, he said as he drew a cigarette from his pack. But he seemed pretty serious about it. Must have caused a shipwreck when the light went out before. Small towns remember things like that. Accidents here affect more people and aren't as easily forgotten, like in the city. Yeah, I guess so. After Sam's cryptic warnings, I was curious to see what rules he left. Dad grabbed the paper from the magnet on the fridge, and we read together. 1. You must keep the light lit from dusk until dawn at all costs. 2. At dusk, you must lock all doors and windows. Do not leave the lighthouse until dawn. 3. You may hear cries for help coming from the bottom of the cliff. Ignore them, do not respond. If you see a ship with 3 red sails on the horizon at dusk, sound the foghorn 3 times. 4. Always make your bed within 5 minutes of waking up in the morning. 5. Do not make a phone call or answer the phone after 8 p.m. for any reason. Dad and I stared at each other after we both finished reading the list, neither of us sure what to say. This can't be serious, I said. Most of these rules make no sense. What's gonna happen if I don't make my bed? What if there is an emergency at night and I can't call 911? There has to be some reason Sam left us these rules. After all, he has been caretaker for 20 years. Let's just do our best to follow them. Okay, son? I want us to start fresh out here. Maybe we can both find some peace here. Lord knows we both need it. I love you, Jake. Can you try for me? I smiled gently at my dad and agreed to give it my best effort. I still had my doubts, and Sam's list of rules on top of his earlier warnings had made me curious. I had the feeling there was more to this lighthouse than the caretaker let on, and I was determined to get to the bottom of it. I reread the list for what felt like the 20th time that night. My head pounded from straining my eyes, as well as the soft but constant buzz from the desk lamp. I could hear Dad snoring from the next bedroom, exhausted from the drive and preparing the lighthouse for our first night. He assured me that the light was in tip-top shape and would cut through the darkness surrounding us. I couldn't sleep, Something about this list and Sam's warnings nagged at me. My gut was telling me there was a connection somewhere. I stared at my old digital radio clock and watched the red lines change from 11:23 to 11:24, lost in thoughts about old native ghost stories and magic. I nearly jumped out my skin as the telephone's ring reverberated through the lighthouse. I froze, thinking of Sam's list. I heard something else, barely audible over the deafening phone. Footsteps. I was too late. Dad was shuffling, still half asleep towards the phone, more on autopilot than conscious. Hello? I heard him mutter into the receiver, sleep still thick in his voice. No, it's not possible. Susan? My heart dropped in my stomach, and my stomach jumped to my throat. I couldn't breathe. My mother, Susan Thompson, was dead and buried. I saw the light fade from her eyes and the dirt cover her casket. This wasn't possible. Who was my father speaking to? I stared at the ceiling in my bedroom, more numb than I felt the first time I saw the lighthouse. I could tell Dad was awake from the overwhelming silence that had replaced the usual bear-like snores. That feeling in my gut I had ever since reading those damn rules was back with a vengeance. I knew I couldn't be mad at Dad. He didn't mean to break the rules. At 52 years of age, answering a phone call in the middle of the night isn't a rule one would normally have, nor a rule with such a cruel punishment if broken. I couldn't take it anymore. I took the list into the kitchen to reread again over a glass of milk I was hopeful would calm me down. My father's presence in the kitchen was only betrayed by the glow off his cigarette, faintly outlining his face in the dark. I'm sorry, Jake. I fucked up. Dad? I started. No, Jake, I'm serious. I was the one that moved us all the way out here, upended our lives, took you from the only home you've known, disconnected you from all your friends. He paused to pull a drag deep into his lungs, holding it in briefly before letting it escape from his nose. And what did I do it for? I've hurt you just as much as your mother's loss has. I haven't been there for you. I'm sorry, Jake. I'm sorry I broke the rules on that list. I was the one that was so adamant we follow them. I don't know why I answered the damn thing. Habit, I suppose, still. I don't know what kind of sick bastard would pull a prank like that. First thing in the morning, we're packing up and getting out of this place. No, we can't. The words were already gone before I realized what I'd said. Dad, I love you, and it's not all your fault. I've been pretty distant too since Mom passed. But we are here now, for whatever reason. Fate, destiny, or just shit luck. We are here for a reason. Maybe we can find that peace you were talking about. Are you sure, son? I know you have been pretty hesitant about this whole situation from the beginning. Why the sudden desire to stay, especially after... I struggled to find words to explain it to him, and also myself. After everything, I should be ready to go. I should already be 1 foot out the door. My brain was racing to connect the dots, while my gut still warned me something was seriously wrong. It just feels like we are meant to be here, was all I could manage. I spent the remaining hours until dawn in the company of the light atop the lighthouse. I watched the waves break in whitecaps on the cliff face below. The list was not far from my mind. Thankfully, no phantom voices or ghostly ships bothered me. Watching the sun slip into the heavens and the stars retreat, my mind went back to what Sam had said about the natives that once lived here. The old deep magic lurking in the ocean, spirits. It was too much. I needed more information. What happened the time the light went out? Why does the town depend on the light? Lighthouses protected ships on the open ocean, not people in their homes on land. I could see all the dots, I just couldn't connect them yet. Once the sun had fully cleared the distant horizon and the last of the fog cleared, I borrowed Dad's car and left for the library. Cape Heights was as average as small towns could be. As the Camry hummed down the main drag, I was able to take in more of the town. Then I had on our first trip through. Cape Heights offered not a single Walmart, 7-Eleven, or any major retailer. Mom and pop shops dotted both sides of the streets, providing the residents with anything a supermarket could, minus the convenient one-stop location. I noticed a pharmacy, baker, dental office, and the only gas station in town, displaying a faded wooden sign for petrol. I finally found the library 2 blocks behind the post office. I entered the library and made my way to the front desk. "Can I help you?" The elderly woman in front of me was the stereotypical librarian. Horn-rimmed glasses, tight gray curls in her hair, thin pursed lips, and eyes that hadn't smiled in years, maybe decades. "Yes, Mom, my name is Jake. Me and my father just moved into the Lighthouse." He took up the post of lighthouse keeper. The caretaker, Sam, gave us a quick history of the town and lighthouse. It interested me, and I wanted to learn some more. Sam mentioned something about the light going out once. "Would there be any periodicals from that time?" I offered. The look I got was hot daggers cutting through ice. "Periodicals are in the back room, and town history is in the local government section," she replied curtly. I spent the entire day in that library. My eyeballs felt like they were ready to explode from all the squinting. Cape Heights Library boasted a very nearly complete history of their town. I found numerous copies of French and English maps from the various times they held their lands, transcripts of diaries of early settlers, accounts of battles and skirmishes with the red paint natives, and even translated oral histories, beliefs, and legends of those early natives. The 2 most important pieces of information I discovered concerned the lighthouse itself and the night the light extinguished. The history of the lighthouse was accurate to what Sam had told us, except for the history of the keepers. Town employee records as far back as the town was founded listed every lighthouse keeper to man that light station, and not one single keeper manned his post for more than 3 months. Every keeper to man that station disappeared into thin air. The caretakers all reported coming to check on them and bring fresh provisions, only to find that light shining and the lighthouse empty. Finding information on the night the light went out proved to be more difficult. Searching the periodicals proved to be exhausting work, but I finally found what I was looking for. In 1963, on a cold August night, the light went out. The caretaker, at the time Charles Vanderbooth, had left the lightkeeper with fresh provisions and in generally good spirits that night. Somehow, within the following 15 minutes after the caretaker's departure, the lighthouse fell dark. Shortly after that, a storm hit Cape Heights, only lasting a reported 10 minutes and not being out of the ordinary for the season. None of this, in and of itself, is particularly newsworthy. It was what was discovered the morning after that was. The following morning, the citizens of Cape Heights awoke to find that 75% of the town had disappeared. Homes were searched, and no signs of foul play were detected. Clothing, wallets, jewelry were all found in their rightful places. Dinner was found cold on a set dining room table. The citizens had no explanation for it. It was as if friends, family, and neighbors had simply disappeared overnight. The only clue was a strange inscription found on a rock near the lighthouse by the caretaker in his search for the keeper, strangely Native American in appearance. I pushed the Camry as hard as it would go, racing back to the lighthouse. I almost had all the dots connected, but something still eluded me. There was still something missing. It didn't matter. Damn the lighthouse, damn Cape Heights, and damn Sam's list. Not a single person who was keeper was ever seen again. I wasn't letting that happen to my dad. We had to get out of here. I barreled into the parking lot and sprinted towards the door. Dusk was beginning to settle, and I wouldn't risk breaking another rule. I locked the door behind me and quickly checked all the windows. The clock on the wall read 8:01 p.m. I unplugged the phone from the wall, but it kept ringing. "Dad," I yelled. "Dad, I need to talk to you. I found some answers. We gotta leave at dawn. We are leaving Cape Heights." Silence answered by calls. I knew Dad was here. I had the car all day. He said he was going to try and relax today and recoup from the previous night's events. I checked the light first, fearing a malfunction had occurred, and he was in the dark, trying to fix it. After the light proved operational in its solitude, I moved back downstairs, still calling his name. I caught it out the corner of my eye, through the cracked door leading to my room. My bed was a mess. I had forgot to make my bed this morning and left my father all alone in the lighthouse. Then I heard it, coming from the 3 bay windows facing the cliff face and tumultuous waters below. "Help! Please, somebody help me!" The sound of my father's voice was unmistakable.